Okay, we're live and ready to roll, looks like. Okay, well, welcome everyone on Facebook Live and also here on Zoom. We are at number 27 of 52 in the Human Miracle. And the topic today is air and its role in restoration and resurrection and preservation. So Mynoo will be sharing all there is to know about the air and its role in restoring the vitality of our human form, the resurrection of our presence, and the dynamism in our relationships, and the preservation of this vibrancy in any and all the collaborations that we may have in our co-creative coexistence. So today, as always, if you have any questions or you have any anything you want to say, please put that in the chat and I will be monitoring that. And we're really excited today because it's all about the air. And there's a lot of we have a lot of energies in the field that are holding space with us today. So that's very exciting. All right, Mynoo, I think we're ready to have you come on here.
Okay, I am.
Are you on, Mynoo?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So just a second. Okay, great. Thank you, dear.
Absolutely.
Let's
Pleasure.
begin with air.
Air.
So we have completed the synchronization of the circadian rhythm, and we are now going into another very important building block that makes up the miracle of being human, the human miracle, which is air. Air, its role in the restoration, resurrection, and preservation. And we're talking about the restoration of vitality, resurrection of presence and dynamism in our relationship, and the preservation of vibrancy in any particular collaboration and co-creative expressions of coexistence that may be required as and when this planet, or as and when creatures or living beings on this planet choose to enrich their own lives further. So there are 4 facets that came through as I prepared for showing up in our session today. The first one is an understanding of air as one of the 5 elements. So air as an element, it plays a very important function, and its key function is that air blows away the clutter and it brings focus. Just purely as an element, you don't even have to feel or experience air, or it doesn't even have to be a wind that is blowing. It's literally that, when you presence the energy of the element air, it blows away the clutter and brings focus. And this clutter, if we look at the human miracle, one of the first things I talked about was the human miracle itself expresses itself through these 6 cylinders. And it's these 6 cylinders, when they start thriving, that's where the regenerative well-being or wellness of this human miracle occurs. So thriving physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally. So as we step forward and continue to live our life, we accumulate clutter unbeknown to us, and sometimes very consciously. And sometimes it is not clutter when we actually amass it, but then we don't do anything to remove it from our field. And that's when it becomes clutter. And it starts to create burdens, pressures, conflicts, and that is how we lose clarity. And it becomes necessary to bring in the power of the element of air to blow away the clutter and bring focus. So if our physical well-being is burdened, then and our physical well-being being burdened can have a direct impact on our mental stability, and that can have a direct impact on our emotional balance. And that can have a direct impact on the level of connection that we maintain to our own spirit, which has its own impact on our social dynamics, which then brings out aspects of us that disconnects us from our own dignity and gives us permission to devour or destroy the dignity of others and the planet itself. That's been a bit of a cycle that we have gotten ourselves into. But it all began with each of the human form. And remember, there is that 100 monkey syndrome, which is based on a psychological experiment that was done. I think it was in the early 20th century or something like that. And this particular psychological experiment basically looked at monkeys as a way of observation of group behavior across the world. So there were 100 monkeys that were brought into this island, and a bunch of bananas was placed on the edge of a branch of a tree. And then when the first monkey climbs up the branch and goes towards the bananas, the people that were running the experiment would spray water on it, so it would come away. And they kept doing this, and they kept doing this, and they kept doing this. After a while, they stopped doing it, because what they observed was that as this monkey went towards the bananas, the other monkeys would start pulling it back. There was no water being sprayed, but there was a behavior that got set in. And what was even more surprising and not expected was they observed this behavior in monkeys in other parts of the world. So the conclusion was that there's a critical mass of, it's called the 100 monkey syndrome. So if you can have 100 monkeys behave in a particular way, then that has an effect on the monkey population around the world. So what's that? What's the 100 equivalent for humans? It's about 1.25 billion humans behaving in a certain way. And that has an impact on humans all over. When it comes to air as an element, and the fact that it is about blowing away the clutter and bringing focus, how did so much of clutter actually even get there? And there's a lot of the clutter that's there, which is not something of our own creation. It's just there. It's there in the words, the language, that there's an energetic burden that is present in our field, even when we are born. We may not have done nothing. But that's the 100 monkey syndrome equivalent, which is affecting our fields and burdening us. Some of our conclusions that, this is the only way things can be done on this planet, or something like this really damages the planet. And it is this 100 monkey syndrome that gave money as a command and control device so much power. which continues to have an impact, commanding and controlling us. It is this 100 monkey syndrome. The good news is, if we actually wish to blow away the clutter and bring focus, focus by its very nature is very personal. You can have a policy, a government can have a policy, but if humans don't decide to, a critical mass of humans don't decide to focus their attention on that policy and implement it, it doesn't actually gain any particular ground. So air as an element is a very important one to clutter our fields as well as declutter them.
Mynoo,
Yeah.
I'm hearing that there's collective clutter, that affects us all, and also our individual clutter, the energies of both you're talking about. Yes, is that correct?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a collective clutter. There is also, you may say, an ancestral clutter, which affects the collective. So there is a collective clutter based on, collective beliefs that might get created. And remember, as Abraham Hicks talks about, a belief is only a thought that we think a lot. It's a thought that we keep thinking. And that is what becomes a belief. And that's how collective clutter can develop. But it also means that is the way in which you can actually dissolve the clutter too, right? By creating new thoughts, simply everyone to their own. It's all about dog eat dog. It's all about that gave rise to this command and control as an accepted form of existence. The reality is the planet was created as a playground of relationships. It wasn't about command and control. It couldn't possibly be. And if you look at, the interesting thing is, if you look at a vast majority of living things on this planet, with the exception of humans, are not about command and control. They're all about living their truth. But we as humans, we are seriously impacted by this command and control. The rest of the planet, yes, it's impacted in terms of the destruction that humans are causing from time to time. But actually, does that stop them from the rest of the living beings on the planet? Does it stop them from living in their truth? It doesn't. But it does have an impact on us because we are the ones that are cluttering our fields. And that is a collective clutter that has come purely from a belief that was planted. There's lineage clutter. There's, the separation of nations creates its own clutter in terms of cultural differences. So it's a very good question. And really, thank you for asking, because the way the air element, this session is going to progress, is going to come from the questions that come through you as an archetype representing humanity. Okay, because we are focusing the air element on how it restores, resurrects, and preserves this human miracle. So there is collective clutter and clutter that impacts the collective. So what I talked about in terms of beliefs was clutter that got created and propagated that impacts the collective. Collective clutter is often clutter that is there of beliefs, of norms, what is accepted as a norm, that said and unsaid norms that determine, how a society conducts itself. And it's just there, something that just we inherit. And that has a direct impact on us. So air as an element can blow away the clutter and bring focus, regardless of where the clutter came from. And remember, clutter is not only mental or emotional. It could be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental. So how do we apply this understanding of air as an element? First of all, begin with reactivating and reconnecting to your own knowingness that air is one of the 5 elements. And it is at the core of everything, everything that exists on this planet, be it a tiny little molecule of soil or an atom of air in our atmosphere, water, food particles, every cell in your being, everything that exists at a cellular, nanocellular, microcellular level has all of the 5 elements humming along in perfect harmony. So when you manage to gather a lot of debris as you're flowing forward, taking on stuff that doesn't serve you and not acting on it, you do require the water element to be activated as an element. And we all have a sufficient amount of that in our bodies. And that water element can wash away the debris and bring flow. Similarly, we are interacting with the air element. Literally, moment by moment, we are interacting with the air element. So anytime you feel that heaviness or you feel burdened by, societal norms or lineage, ancestral burdens, you can activate the air element. Air element is activated, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, certainly activated through your breath, but more importantly, it is activated through objects such as flowers. Flowers always bring in the air element. And sure, even having a little bit of breeze brings in the air element, as long as you really activate air as an element. You don't have to worry about what you're directing it to. From time to time, it's very powerful to just bring in the air element and give your cells and your field permission to, work with the air element, allow the air element to do its magic, blow with the clutter and bring focus. And I recall, I knew about the elements, I'd heard about it. I didn't understand how to work with those elements other than through, a fire ceremony or some form of a ritual and chanting some mantras and stuff. I didn't really know anything more than that until, when I went to Bali in 2010 and started reconnecting to the fullness of the being of me and took up living an extraordinary life where all aspects of life coexist. And it's there that I started understanding through a series of downloads, an understanding of the power of these elements. It is there that I got that everything that we see outside of us on the planet is a direct projection of that which exists inside of us. So when the quality of air outside of us is very poor and it's full of stuff that is not serving us, it is coming from a critical mass of us, humans, allowing for that scale of clutter to exist within our own fields. and it has a direct impact on the quality of air. And this played out. I mean, I used to see it in Bali once a year. My dear friend JP and I, we were staying in the same villa together. And one of the things that we would do each year on Balinese New Year is really do what the locals did, which is, stay fasting, stay silent, and not use any of the usual stuff like electricity and stuff. The fridge would be turned off. All of that would be there. And literally the entire city would come to a complete standstill, including the airports would be closed and all of that. And, by the afternoon of Nyepi, which is their Balinese New Year, you could actually hear the rustling of leaves. You could hear that the sound that the leaves make is different for different bushes and different trees. You would become present to, whilst we as humans were silent, there is so much stuff that is active and alive and going around, playing and excising its presence, expressing its presence around us. What also happens, by the way, in the build-up to Nyepi is they have a particular festival where you have a lot of children, for example, doing the lion dance, the Chinese lion dance. So there's a lot of, beating of drums and gongs and a lot of chanting that takes place. Huge activation of the air element that's taking place for 10 days, which builds up to Nyepi. And after lots of fireworks and everything, Nyepi begins just at sunrise, and it finishes at sunrise the following day. And we would literally experience a complete transformation of the quality of air and quality. And we used to put it down to, well, there weren't any scooters. But I mean, seriously, in a matter of few hours, this whole space would correct itself so rapidly. At that time, we saw it, we experienced it year after year, and it was very powerful. And we would often wish that if only the world would had the opportunity to experience it, where everything just stops for a day. And then lo and behold, the world had an opportunity to experience it during our Corona times. That's why I call it the crown phenomenon. And we had an extended period, where the air element, all the elements were activated. The air element was also activated. And all of that conversation about quality of air and how it was it was destroying our future generations because it was going to take so long for all of that to be corrected. I mean, I was living in Mumbai and I would travel to Delhi. So I knew the quality of air was a particular issue for us there. Like Delhi, people from Delhi just had never seen a clear blue sky, let alone fluffy clouds in the sky. There was no chance of seeing any rainbows because there was so much smog all the time. And within a matter of a few months of the air element being activated, blue skies, fluffy clouds, rainbows appeared. Quality of air went from 400 and something to 25. And yeah, you can say, oh, okay, but there weren't any cars on the road. There weren't any airplanes flying. I'm sure all of that contributed. But also, each human being was very focused on the second aspect that I'm going to talk about. So as a result, there was a lot of focused attention on the air element. Because one of the things Corona did do was affect our breath. There was such an attention on people measuring their oxygen levels, doing whatever they can to, build up their own inner capacity to breathe deeper and hold more oxygen. Unbeknown to us, whilst we were doing all of these as acts of survival, we were in fact consciously activating the air element. And clutter was being blown away, and focus. And the focus was nature reclaiming itself by itself. And, there was the moments of critical mass of the reclamation of nature had occurred, and it was sustained for a particular period of time. So it wasn't just a blip. That is when, Corona also, and including its variants, started to, go away as an issue that had brought the world to a standstill. The world was not at a standstill. There was such a fabulous hive of activity, multiplying and bringing back, restoring the balance of the myriad of and the variety of living things that made up this planet, which was necessary so that we would have the perfect amount of living beings that were operating from their truth. So when we did emerge back, whatever it is that we as humans might attempt that would hold the risk of destroying the planet would actually not take hold. Because humans represent a very small proportion of the total number of living beings that live on this planet. Vast majority of this planet operates from its truth. So the 100 monkey syndrome was not only dependent on humans when it came to the resurrection and restoration of this planet. And we often, you've heard me say this, and many of you here do practice yoga and Pilates and stuff. You know that once you've created a cellular memory of something, you can always go back to it very easily. So a cellular memory of within a matter of a few days, a maximum few weeks in certain areas, nature reclaimed itself. It'll continue to reclaim itself. That things going out of control to such an extent that could implode the entire planet, that is gone. Because what has been anchored in the human psyche is take nothing for granted. And again, it was so visible to me in terms of what occurred here in Dubai, in the UAE, just only last week, with the crazy flooding that took place all of a sudden, and how it literally brought, these different kingdoms to a standstill and reawakened the community, collaborative co-creation of coexistence spirit within individuals. Within a matter of hours, it took place. It just rained continuously for 6 hours. And this continuous thunder, very important to activate the air element. Sound in that way definitely does that. And of course, there's lots and lots of water element activation. Lightning and electricity going through all of this water that was, going through the floors and ceilings of malls and buildings, activated the fire element. And all of this putting so much pressure on the earth that the earth started to part in many, many parts where, the earth just started collapsing, because after all, everything is built on sand here. Activated the earth element. And 6 hours later, the sky appeared. So you had the space for the entire fullness of the energetic recalibration of what had occurred to get anchored. Air element plays a very important role as an element. So, Dea, is there anything that you want to share as an observation from what you've heard me say?
Yes, I did. When you were talking about the different ways to bring the air in, and you said flowers, I kept thinking flowers, how I love to have flowers in my home because it helps feel like the air's moving and circulating and nature's being activated, so like this love for flowers. But it's so the wind blowing, you open the windows, you let the air come in, you have flowers, use your breath. Are there other things that you can
We'll go
help?
through those. We'll go through those.
Oh, okay,
Through those
great,
in a
great.
moment.
All right.
The thing to know is, just like the water element, we are surrounded by it. We are surrounded by water, and we have a lot of water within us,
Right.
right? We don't realize that we are literally walking in and out of floating rivers all the time. Because if there wasn't moisture in the air, we would shrivel up and be gone very, very fast. Maybe, matter of just a few minutes. So there is moisture in the air, even in the heat of the desert, there's moisture in the air. When it comes to air, we are very aware of it, that it is everywhere, outside of us and inside of us. And we brought conscious attention to it during the corona time with all that oxygen measurement that we were doing, oxygen levels.
Right. I think the awareness around our breath and how important our breath is really was up for everybody, checking their.
Absolutely, because it was necessary from the divine plan point of view for humans to consciously activate the air element at that time, right? Which did, so we are surrounded by this inside and outside all the time. This is a very important thing to remember. Not everything has the elemental power. We have these 5: water, air, earth, sky, fire, and we are surrounded by them inside and outside. Fire, as in the sun. The sun is always present. There's a movement of the earth which actually, brings about a nighttime, but doesn't mean the sun is not there. So fire is always there. The earth is the ship in which we are living and breathing. And there's always the sky, the night sky, the day sky. So every element is always there. The way you power it up is by you focusing your attention and bringing it in. You have the elements playing out around you. You have them present within you. We have acid in our body, the fire element. Acid doesn't just go about willy-nilly. It would have just destroyed us from the inside out. Our internal water enables for acid to flow where it is required. The level of oxygen actually brings about a good harmonization of our pH levels. And, whenever we are walking or sitting or whatever, we have the earth element that keeps us very, connected to the ground. And if you didn't have that space that allows for life force energy to move through your body, it feels very cloggy at times, right? because we have that space element within us also. So this is a very important aspect to understand about the elemental nature of Earth. Let's look at the second one. The second way in which the air itself restores, resurrects, and preserves is through through an act of breath. And I'm talking about this in the context of the human miracle. So breath is an action that we take. And it is the act of breath that is the gift that we are born with, which gives us the state of life. So when you have the state of life, you require air to breathe. And you require air to breathe because that is the way you consciously bring in the power of the air element. So you're constantly decluttered and focus, it starts to get invoked. You may choose not to do anything with the focus that is invoked. That is up to you. But breath is the way in which you bring air in, and that allows the air to serve and support the human miracle. Literally, every breath you take activates every step you take, every choice you make, every decision you take. Because if you have that shortness of breath, many of us who had corona have experienced that shortness of breath. And what happens when that oxygen level goes down? Within seconds, all of your cylinders start feeling depleted. Vitality is lost very rapidly. Vibrancy disappears. You have no interest whatsoever in any social relationships. So dynamism is lost. You don't have the capacity, capability, or the energy to collaborate, let alone co-create. And you're literally fighting for your own existence. And then you're not even minded towards coexistence.
Yeah, that's why, Mynoo, they call it the breath of life. Like you have to live, you know?
That's right. That's
You
totally.
take it. And they always say, you know, I was there to see my mom take her last breath of life.
Yeah.
And then she left out, you know? So that the
Yeah.
breath of life is the key to a life, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I was there when my mother took her last breath. And it's a very different experience, the last breath experience. If you've had it, there's a particular sound that the body also makes when that last breath is taken, to really fill itself up fully. And it's blowing away the clutter of any form of energetic fear that might be there, confusion that might be there, and focus for the soul to depart.
Fascinating to witness.
Very fascinating, you know, very fascinating. Now, who controls your breath? It's you. And even if you don't think about it, it's one of those things you naturally do. You don't have to think about it. You naturally breathe. Now, you can transform the quality of aliveness by practicing ways in which you can breathe so that you're able to take deeper breaths. Now, given that the breath activates the air element and invokes this practice of blowing away the clutter and bringing focus, you must have heard this, and I certainly say this to people, and I've heard it myself. When people get overwhelmed, we say, take a breath, take a breath, take a breath, take a deep breath. When a woman's going through labor and she's consumed with the pain of labor, take a breath, breathe into it. So that clutter can be blown away and pain doesn't become the identity definer of this woman in labor. Blows away the clutter and brings focus of being the mother that is birthing new life. Allows you to go through the process of birthing this new life into existence. Sometimes it's called the freeze phenomenon. Sometimes when people have a shock, and it could be a deer that is hit by a car, or a dog hit by a car, they go into a state of shock and freeze. Or someone has a really sad news that has come in and they freeze. And the way to support them out of that is get that breath in. Mm-hmm. So you can tap, like when the baby is born, there is a bit of tapping that is done to the baby. So it starts with breathing. That's why I call it the first breath day. And that clutter of that safe, cozy space of the womb, that is blown away. And the focus into living this gift of life is brought into the baby. And it starts to cry. That's also activating the breath to bring in the air element, bring in that reconnection to the air element. So given what you know now about air as an element, you can very powerfully direct your breath. If you're dealing with a project that requires to be completed, and there is some confusion about certain aspects of it, simply breathe into it. I mean, you may have experienced people say, just breathe into it, just breathe some life into it. But really what is happening is that phrase is saying, activate the air element. It'll blow away the clutter and give you focus. And whatever it is that might be confusing actually gets clarified. And now you can move forward. So whenever you feel stuck in any part of your life, use your breath. With conscious awareness, activate the air element. And see that clutter blown away and focus return. If you feel that there is lack of focus, if you feel that you're thinking a lot, you slide into overthinking and can't get out of that trap of overthinking. Then all you have to do is to bring in the air element into your declaration of thanking, and just keep going with thanking, bringing in the air element as you thank. And that literally dissolves the trap of overthinking. And you can now work in an empowering way with your thoughts. Breath is your access. Breath is your reins that keeps you in charge of how your life occurs, how it progresses with focus and flow. The interesting thing is, we already have water within us, so what debris is being washed away. Flow is, we are constantly being brought into flow. If we don't consciously connect to the air element by activating it consciously through our breath, then you may be in flow, but you'll keep going out of flow. And you'll be backwards and forwards all the time. I mean, for me, as I was preparing for this session, and last night as I was looking through what is coming through for me to share, I was like, oh my God, 2010, I lifted myself off from Bali for 3 weeks, lifted myself off from London and went to Bali for 3 weeks. And I learned this 13 different breathing sequences. And I would do this pranayama series with 13 different forms of breath every single day. And it takes about an hour and a half. I didn't know about these elements or anything like that. And many of you who knew me, like Dea, you certainly knew me before that journey. And then you've known me through the journey, and you know me, as I've evolved and where I am now. And that scale of spiritual awakening, or the downloads that I kept receiving, and the clarity with which, the speed with which, the pace with which they appeared, all of that, I'm pretty sure, is because I was doing my breathing exercises every single day for such a long stretch of time with conscious focus, activating the air element, invoking all of these different gifts in me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this realization literally only landed, when I prepared for this session.
Mm-hmm.
That, okay, this is it. So whatever would happen to me, and this is true even now. We began our session today at 4:30 in the morning. And I didn't have an hour and a half to do the breathing practice. I only had 20 minutes. But it's become such a practice that I just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know why. So I'm like giving myself a good dose to start the day with all of the clutter blown away and being in focus. Writing is something I struggled with so much. As I, after I became a teenager, from that point on, all the way until I started writing in 2010 again, I struggled with writing. And I'm very sure the ease with which these words flow through me and I write them, my breathing practice has something to do with this, because the air element is activated with conscious standing.
Yeah.
You want to share, Dea?
Well, all I can say is when I started my yoga and meditation practice 25 years ago, at least in the Kundalini practice, we have hundreds of different breath ways to breathe. One to put you to sleep, one to gain energy, one to tap into the more the female side, one the male, like just something for everything. It's quite the pranayama practices are quite
Yeah.
extensive, and they really like when you get in touch with your breath, it really takes you on a whole new journey, is what yeah. So yeah, I've had my own deep experiences with it too. I think it really altered my life path
Yeah.
to get in touch with my breath. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. And like even aerobics, people may not be doing it for the breath, but it really does get you to breathe deeper. I mean, and the quantum is much higher over an extended period of time.
Right. And plus what I notice is when I work out, no matter what I do, if I use my breath, when I'm stretching, I can go further down, take a breath in and then release it and go a little further. You just use your breath to get back really deep into your physical body, and you can really get and tap into places you never felt before. So I use breath that way as well, really a lot when I'm working
Very,
out.
very true. And
Yeah.
one of you've done some of my pranayama practices, as have some many others who've done the journey to miracles. Have like half an hour of the breath of fire,
Yeah. Whew,
kapal, for example, right? And it's quite a lot, half an hour.
it's
But
a
it was
lot.
like, how does it become breath of fire, given that it is the air element? But because there is such a focus, and that is on breathing out, and you're pumping with that breath out, this
Mm,
whole region of your stomach, which is where the acid is formed, and the acidity that impacts us is often to do with this whole digestive system that is there. So you're literally like pumping it, pumping it, pumping it, pumping it, pumping. It's like the aerobics, like circuit
yeah.
training, or that whole,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's
just
like a yeah, getting everything moving in there so that
yeah,
it works. And yeah, it's so
circuit training.
amazing.
You feel the heat coming out of
Yeah.
your
And
face and your
so
skin,
there's
and
all that, and then there's the deeper breathing where it takes you
yeah.
down so low, and then you kind of have these blissed out experiences too. So there's a whole range of feeling and emotion you get for your
So
breath.
breath is our way. If you understand with breath, you activate and invoke the air element, you can direct that element to any area of your life. It's a very physical act, and you can apply it to get mental clarity. It's a physical act. You can apply it to get emotional stability. It's a physical act. You can apply it to make that deep, like they are said, blissed out experience, reconnecting to the spirit of you and the spirit of anything. It is a physical act. And when it comes to love making with another, breath, simply breath, synchronizing and harmonizing that breath,
Mhm.
doing nothing but being fully present to just the breath, brings about the most exquisite and enchanting lovemaking that you would have ever experienced,
Mhm.
including the peak orgasm that continues like a valley, vitalizing and energizing you with life force energy that you may never have experienced before, simply
Mhm.
by being in the presence of another, breathing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's another wonderful practice too. The whole body of work.
Yeah, your whole body of work. Oh, okay. The third one is air is also, just like water is a carrier of the seed of life, air is also a carrier, and it's a carrier of composites. And so as a result, lots of things can be carried by the air. You look at air that is being generated through a tornado, it can carry a car, a tree, and lots of debris with it, as well as water. It is a carrier of composites, where these different elements don't necessarily lose their identity, but they can be carried by it. As a result, with the type of pollution that you have, air pollution escalates very rapidly because of this interesting quality of air being a carrier of composites. Now, once you understand that it's a carrier of composites, and you know that as an element, it has a power to blow away the clutter and bring focus, then you can allow the composites to be the clutter that you wish to blow away, to bring perfect, pristine presence within you energetically, or to just bring cleanliness to an area that you may be applying the air to blow away the composites. So, when you have the autumn leaves, they use a blower.
Mhm.
They don't sit there picking those leaves, they just use a blower. using the power of air to carry composites. And that blower directs those leaves into an area where they can become compost and therefore nourishing for the
And air
soil.
also carries seeds too, a lot of
Absolutely.
times.
Seed, pollen.
Pollen and seeds and
Yeah. Yeah. Whole host of things because it is a carrier. I mean, this was quite a revelation. We don't have so much time to go into the depth of this carrier aspect, but anything that is a carrier, will automatically carry. And now you know the quality of what it makes available to you, blowing away the clutter, bringing focus, and it is a carrier. It means just like you get me in my meditation. I always talk about release the whatever doesn't serve you to the core of the earth. Air is also a carrier. So you can actually release stuff also to the air. So sometimes when people have been holding themselves back in a controlled environment, they are encouraged to just scream it out or just scream into a cushion because it is a carrier, and all of those myriad of conflicting emotions that you may be feeling inside, you can just literally scream them out and it's gone. And in doing so, air delivers the fourth element, fourth aspect that supports the restoration, resurrection, and preservation, is the lightness of being. With all of these qualities that air carries, that is what brings in that gift of lightness of being. So hence, I say flowers represent the element of air. They have a lightness of being. So you can begin from number one, air as an element, and really work with that. Or two, air and breath. Or three, understanding that air is a carrier. Or you could go straight to the lightness of being and have everything about air be activated and invoked, and have the benefit of the air element very present.
amazing.
Amazing, really.
Amazing. I like how you ended it because you can go straight to the lightness of being. Like that's air, the lightness of being. And it's
Yeah.
full regalia. It's majestic lightness of being. It's just so perfect.
With
Yeah.
beauty and perfection. You have the Fibonacci sequence showing up in flowers. I just really love when I create my bowl of water bowl with flowers. I usually like to have at least some full flowers, not only petals, because it's so beautiful to see that Fibonacci playing out in how these petals are structured. And there is a lightness of being. So there's a rigid structure there, and there is lightness of being.
Like they're smiling at you, you know? That's
Yeah,
like how I feel when I look at a flower. So
literally.
yeah, literally.
So
So
over to
yeah.
you to conclude this
Yeah,
session.
well, Mynoo, that was just exquisite as usual. And like I said, the lightness of being just encompasses the whole thing with the air quality and what it does. But just to say that it blows away clutter and brings focus, and all the ways that you went over it. Like I can't imagine so much stuff you talked about that I wouldn't have imagined that came out from this. How we can just breathe and all the ways we can breathe out clutter, go to our breath, but also through flowers and through our thoughts and our mental and our emotional and everything. We can just clear it all out. And just there's just so many ways. And with your practice, your breathing practices is such a powerful way to get in touch with how we can move our breath and clear. So thank you, Mynoo, for all of that. And yeah, I'll stick with the lightness of being because
Yeah,
that's
it's a
the
great
best.
start. So you can literally start everywhere, anywhere. I begin with my breathing practice.
Yeah.
And now that I know what it has delivered to me and to the world through whatever it is that I've been able to bring forth. How amazing is that, you know?
Yeah. I think that if we just close our eyes before we go to sleep and take some breaths and just feel the lightness of being, like I kind of do that every night. It's a really great practice. And then you fall asleep, you
Yeah,
know, honoring the breath and feeling light.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
It gives you a very good access to stillness, you
yeah,
know? And you don't have to go into silence to find stillness.
right. Oh, that's a good distinction. You don't have to be. Yeah, it's
There's
beautiful.
much more about this. Let's see what else emerges, whether I'm to do another session on air under the human miracle. I will allow spirit to guide me. There's lots of, there's a very specific area that I'll be covering under the human miracle, which is to do with our connective tissue. It is a building block of the human miracle. Um, that's what I thought I would be covering today, and the guidance was to talk about air, so that we can blow away the clutter and bring focus.
I think all of us can do that all the time, right? It's a constantly
Yeah.
practice all the time. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
great thing is we are breathing. That's just a function. You have life, you breathe.
You breathe. You breathe.
So you may as well do it consciously,
That's
giving
right.
yourself permission. Every breath I take, blow away the clutter, bring focus.
Beautiful. Well,
So,
thank you everyone for being here tonight. And thank you, Mynoo, for such a wonderful transmission. And
thank
till till
you.
next time.
Next time.
Namaste. Thank you. Bye, Lynn. Bye.
Bye.